Welcome to this edition of the Newsmakers on the third and final U.S. presidential debate. With voting day just over 2 weeks away, was this the performance that could seal the election for either candidate? We'll be discussing the issues and the public's response and asking the crucial question, who won? Hello and welcome to the Newsmakers with me, Andrea Sankey. The U.S. presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have faced off on the debate stage for the last time before the country goes to the polls on November 8th. Now, their exchanges were bitter and personal, as we've come to expect, and the issues covered included abortion, gun laws, immigration, and foreign policy. But as people in the U.S. and around the world digest the impact of the final debate, there's one particular issue that stood out, and that is Trump's refusal to say whether he will accept the election result. We'll be discussing all these issues and more in just a moment, but first, Sandra Gatman takes a closer look at the debate and the online response.
Patrol agent 16,000 way it was meant to be.
The final showdown, a last chance for candidates to burn their opponents, fire up their supporters, and sway the undecided.
On behalf of women's rights.
And once again, it turned nasty.
Such a nasty one.
Trust fund. He'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear.
They threw familiar swings about Clinton's deleted emails.
She should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
And Trump's comments about women.
Donald thinks belittling women makes him bigger.
But the real shocker of the night was Trump's suggestion he might dismiss the election result if he loses.
The loser concedes to the winner.
I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
So who won? Hard to tell, but the chatter online might give us an idea. During the debate, millions of people fact-checked and searched online. At one point, Hillary Clinton even encouraged it.
And, I just want everybody to go Google it. Google Donald Trump Iraq.
Turns out it was the most searched query about Trump, according to Google Trends. Viewers also looked up Justice Ginsburg, who once called Donald Trump a faker. As for Clinton, people wanted to know more about Roe versus Wade, the case that strengthened abortion rights. They also got curious about claims the Clinton Foundation benefited while Hillary was Secretary of State. But the most searched item overall? Bigly, a term Donald Trump used in the debate and not for the first time. We're not even sure it's a word, but it was the most memed phrase, too.
But we have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out.
Other gems like bad hombres and nasty woman sparked viral hashtags on Twitter. All jokes aside, it appears the online world is taking Hillary's side. Even on Breitbart, the conservative blog, 51.5% of voters said Clinton won the debate. But how much of what we see online reflects real-world thinking? Sandra Gatman, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from London is James Boyes. He's a political historian and the author of 2 books on Hillary Clinton. And from the U.S. state of Texas, I'm joined by radio host John Gibson. Thanks both so much for joining us. Let me just start with where that report left off. Is the quote-unquote online world to be believed, John Gibson? Did Hillary clearly win this?
Well, yeah, look, the people who comment in the commentariat declared her the winner far and away, even on the right wing, even among conservatives. I'm not sure it makes any difference to Trump supporters. The question is whether that 14% or so who may be undecided thought that Trump had his best performance to date, or whether they thought that Hillary clearly defeated him. Look, she was better. She was practiced. She was clearly the politician who has done this before. But on the other hand, this was his best debate, and certainly better than the previous 2.
That 14% you mentioned, I watched 2 undecided forums following the debate. last night, and the undecided voters in both those forums were split about 50-50. James Boyes, is that the silent majority we've been hearing about that is actually going to decide this election?
Well, let's be honest about this. One of the things that these debates have done is, I think, solidified the support for both candidates within their own existing camps. Donald Trump supporters will no doubt be very, very pleased that he was aggressive and in Hillary Clinton's face, whilst Hillary Clinton supporters will no doubt champion her positions and the fact that she was able to get an awful lot of good sort of jabs in at Donald Trump. What I don't think Donald Trump was able to do was necessarily expand upon his base. He's done remarkably well. Let's give Donald Trump the credit. He's won the nomination, but he's now like the dog that's chasing the car. What does he do? How does he's got the nomination, he's on the car, but what does he do with it? And I think the problem is that he's not moved out of the primary season towards the general election. So he seems to be unable to change his game, to come into the center ground. And it's not that Hillary Clinton is doing so brilliantly well with that crowd, I think. It's just that Donald Trump seems to be reverting back to the Breitbart crowd within the Republican Party, I think, and abandoning that center ground, which he needs if he wants to win that majority that you're rightly talking about.
John, if you have a response, go ahead. If not, I wanted to ask something else.
No, that's largely right. The problem with this is that, there's the Brexit polls. I mean, all these polls show Donald Trump way behind. And if you were betting money, you'd bet on Hillary Clinton. But he has galvanized an angry populist movement in this country that really it has defied all previous predictions. So I'm not willing to go out far on the limb. I would concede, yeah, she looks like she's ahead. She looks like she did better last night. The polls say she's ahead. If you were betting money, you'd bet that she'd win. But I'd hold a little back on a surprise.
John, you talk about those angry Americans. Why is it that Americans really like hearing from Trump what a failure America actually is?
Because they feel they are failing. Look, the economy over the last 8 years has benefited the coasts. It's benefited the major urban areas. It has not benefited the middle of the country, at least in the way that people feel it. And they also see their culture slipping away. And there's just a whole host of issues that they're grumbling about and angry about and bitter about. And even though Donald Trump isn't a perfect candidate by any means, he seems to speak for them. And that's why, as your other guest was saying, his base is so loyal to him. And it's just a question of whether those people who are still undecided may tip a little bit his way, or if they've just decided Hillary's a safer bet.
Okay. James, if you don't mind, I'm just going to move on to one of the headlines of this debate, as we addressed earlier, and that was Trump's basic refusal to say that he will accept what this election delivers if it's against him. Now, it is a state system. Many of the states are Republican-controlled, but still, let's hear exactly what he had to say about how he won't admit that he will accept the results.
I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times, they actually wrote an article about it, that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it. I think they're going to see through it. We'll find out on November 8th, but I think they're going to see through it.
But, sir,
Chris, she should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
But, sir, there is a tradition in this country. In fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner.
I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that because that's horrifying.
James, let me ask you first. I mean, how does this work? That's never been said before, this distrust of the entire electoral system in the United States. It's kind of like heads I win, tails you lose.
Yeah, and, you know, I think of all the outrageous things, if we can call it that, that Donald Trump has come out and said, you know, all the people he's attacked, attacking the fundamental tenets of American democracy like this is, I think, the most dangerous thing that he has possibly done. It's one thing to alienate demographic groups, women, but to basically suggest that the system is rigged. You've said something very, very important in your introductory piece there, which is that, you know, at a state-by-state level, the individual states dictate how the elections are run, and a good number of those states across the country are run by Republicans. And therefore, you know, you would imagine that they will have rules and ideas that which will favor a Republican candidate. Certainly, I know a lot of people over the last 24 hours are raising the specter of Florida, where, of course, Jeb Bush was governor, and it's undoubtedly true that that helped his brother become president. It didn't make him president, but that didn't hurt him. Now, if we're looking around the country, state by state, Democrat, Republican, you know, there's a good split here. So there's the suggestion that electoral fraud is going to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president is a major impediment, I think, for his argument at this point. He started that debate brilliantly last night, I thought. For his first 10, 15 minutes, Donald Trump was the best he had been in the 3 debates. The problem is that he has a pattern. He starts well, and it's like the further he goes on, the more conspiratorial he gets. So that by the time he gets to the end of the 3rd debate, the ultimate conspiracy emerges, and it destroys the credibility that he's tried to build up as a viable conservative Republican candidate, I think.
Okay, John Gibson, go ahead.
Well, so say everybody in the media and the elites and the political establishment. I'm not sure voters really care about this much at all. Look, it was only 16 years ago, I guess that is more than only, but only 16 years ago that both George W. Bush and Al Gore contested an election. And we had a 30-day recount. It's not a horrible, unusual thing in this country for candidates to contest an election. Now, you know, the reason that Donald Trump was asked that question is he has claimed that the system is rigged, so it leads naturally to, well, are you going to accept the result? He's clumsy in the way he answers things, but I don't think that voters think that this is such a huge deal as the political establishment is making it. It's not as though, and I would reject any suggestion that he is calling for armed rebellion against the results of the election. He's merely saying what Bush and Gore did in 2000, let's have a look at this, and we may demand a recount.
Okay, John, let me ask you then what voters do care about. Putin came up again in this debate. Trump said that Clinton doesn't like Putin because he said that Putin outsmarted her. He likes Putin. He said he's a strong leader. Do Americans care either way?
Well, I think Americans care if Putin is fooling around with the election in the way James referred to, if they were hacking into the actual voting machines. Of course, they care about that. I don't think they care if the Russians are at the root of this email scandal that's engulfed the Clinton campaign. I think they actually like seeing what's been said. And Putin, of course, I think Americans regard Putin as a rival, more like Mitt Romney described it in his debate against Barack Obama in 2012, rather than like Barack Obama described it as an artifact of a previous era of foreign relations. So, no, I don't think that Americans think that Putin needs to be our buddy or is our buddy. And Donald Trump, and I would once again repeat in his clumsy way, says things like, you know, I like Putin. Wouldn't it be good if we got along with Putin? I think generally speaking, Americans think, yeah, it probably is a good idea if we get along with the other nuclear-armed superpower in the world.
Okay, James, go ahead. Your take on the Putin card in the debate?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, to be honest, you know, I thought Chris Wallace did a really great job last night of bringing issues up. You know, one of the complaints about debates generally is that they're personality-driven. And I thought last night, you know, there was a good to and fro with regard to issues on foreign affairs, upon the economy, women's issues, and a whole range of debate policy issues, which was refreshing to see, quite frankly. With regard to Vladimir Putin, there's no doubt about it that he's been a fly in the ointment of the Obama administration. There was, I think, a deliberate attempt to reset that relationship when Medvedev was running the country in Putin's absence. And clearly, it should be noted that that really fell apart as soon as Vladimir Putin returned to office. It's remarkable, I think, to see a Republican candidate for the presidency sort of playing footsie a little bit with the leader of the former Soviet Union, now Russia. I'm surprised that that hasn't caused more of a pushback from the American conservative right-of-centre movement, who, of course, have traditionally been vehement in their opposition to communism and left-of-centre politics. But the extent to which people are going to vote on this, I think, is possibly debatable. I mean, ultimately, people talk about voting for policy issues, but time and again, we found out that they do vote on personalities, and we'll see how that plays out come November 8th.
Okay, John, quick final words in response to that?
Let's not forget, the Republican center-right establishment in this country did not pick Donald Trump. Voters did. Republicans have been against Donald Trump from the get-go. So while, yeah, James is probably right, this is something the Republican center-right establishment would not do, that's not who chose Donald Trump.
Okay, John Gibson, we'll give you the last word. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us from Texas, and James Boyce there from London on the Newsmakers. It's been said that the best way to determine who wins a U.S. presidential debate is to watch it with the sound off and just look at the body language of the candidates, whether they're aggressive or defensive, under pressure or overconfident. And in this election season, the bravado of Donald Trump, set against the practiced control of Hillary Clinton, has provided plenty of material for analysts of communication skills. We'll be speaking to one such expert in a moment, but first, Natalie Pohonen rounds up the candidates' performances.
Well, here we go again. Go to the fact checkers.
You called it the gold standard of trade deals. You said it's the finest deal.
The body language of the candidates has come under as much scrutiny as the content of their debates. They're both comfortable on camera even when they're not comfortable with each other. And non-verbal communication speaks volumes when both contenders are trying to stand out to secure their place as the next president.
Iran is taking over Iraq.
Secretary Clinton.
Iran is taking over Iraq. We don't get it.
Secretary Clinton.
We would have gained if they did it by surprise.
Wait. Secretary Clinton, it's an open discussion.
Donald Trump's use of pinching and pointing to emphasize his points has almost become a trademark. But it was his looming stance behind Hillary Clinton in the second debate, which was seen as a power play, even stalker-like behavior. Clinton's decision to turn towards the audience was seen as open and engaging. She's been praised for maintaining a calm and dignified expression in the face of verbal attacks, but also criticised for being too animated. She smiled too much and not enough. He's grimaced and been too agitated.
If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. But you were not an effective
Please allow her to
senator.
respond. She didn't interrupt you.
You know, under our Constitution, presidents have something called veto power.
And the decision about who gets that power will be influenced by their ability to project a presidential image. Natalie Pohonen, The Newsmakers.
Well, Ruth Sherman joins me now from New York. She's a communications expert and commentator, as well as an author. Ruth, thanks so much for joining us. First, I want you to tell us what stood out to you most as far as body language is concerned in this debate.
Last night, what I saw was that Donald Trump was more disciplined, much more disciplined, so that people who might be looking for a reason to vote for him, might be on the fence about it, might be worried about some of his more outlandish statements and policy proposals, would say to themselves, you know, I might be able to envision this guy in the Oval Office based on his performance last night. Now, if you listen to the pundits after that, we heard that this was a devastating night for Donald Trump. But if I'm the average voter in the United States and I've been struggling, I'm thinking, you know, I need a change. And Donald Trump last night, I think, showed that he was capable of the discipline he hasn't been able to show so far.
That's an interesting perspective. Let me ask you more about some of the kind of minutia of how he communicates and how he performs in these debates. His interrupting constantly, I mean, multiple times more than Hillary Clinton attempted to. Do viewers, do you think, respect that or resent it?
It depends on the viewer. I think if you are a Republican voter and you are, number one, in favor of Donald Trump, you've already decided to vote for him, or you're looking for a reason to vote for him, or you hate Hillary Clinton, then his interruptions are welcome. But if you are thinking that Hillary Clinton should have been more polite, perhaps more respectful, then you might think that his interruptions are over the top. You know, my take on his interruptions last night was that they weren't as boorish and rude, with a couple of exceptions, there always are exceptions, as they had been in the past. And because Trump had such a low bar to get over in his performance last night, all he had to be was better than he'd been in the past. And he was, even when it comes to the interruptions.
Okay, let me ask you then from a broader perspective. I've heard some analysts say that Trump is allowed to be loud, while Hillary has to work very hard at staying restrained and composed. Why is it that he gets away with this overt, audacious behavior?
It's sexism, to be perfectly blunt. We've been having a great conversation in the United States about this. Just like Bernie Sanders was able to yell and holler his way through the entire primary season, Donald Trump is able to behave in ways that are looked at askance when it's a woman candidate. People have listened to candidates over all of U.S. history who are men. At this level, we have not ever seen a woman campaign at this level before, at least in this country, so it's new for us. And we may be thinking, well, the only person I've ever heard yell is my mother, and I didn't like that very much. So that's what we associate it with. We'll see. If Hillary Clinton wins, we'll begin to hear voices that are louder, and maybe she'll help us get used to what it sounds like when a woman raises her voice and gets emotional.
Okay, something else interesting that you pointed out in one of your writings is that he's physically much bigger than her, and that gives him an advantage. How do you counter that?
You can't. You absolutely can't. Now, Hillary Clinton happens to be a small woman. The problem is she has been in the public eye now for what, going on 30 years, I guess. And we think of her as bigger than life. We don't see her. Most people don't see her up close and personal. They don't know she's short by most height standards. So anybody would tower over her, and he is tall. So the way you counter it is by behaving in a way that's masterful, that's confident. For example, her white suit last night showed a lot of confidence. You know as well as I do, women are reluctant to wear white, first of all, because it puts a few pounds on, and we want to avoid that at all costs. But also, most average women will have maybe one white dress or white outfit that they'll wear from time to time, only because they're afraid it will get dirty and they'll have to send it out to the dry cleaners. So white shows confidence. It shows that she's mindful about that.
Okay, Ruth Sherman, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us from New York. You've been watching this edition of the Newsmakers on the third and final U.S. presidential debate with me, Andrea Sankey. We've spent most of the show focusing on the candidates themselves, but we're going to leave you now with images of the people both Trump and Clinton are trying to convince, the voters watching the debate. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.